In this video, I want to show you how to render out of mental array with final gather and ambient occlusion, and how to bake all of this information into vertex color. This is a question I got recently, and there's no way to directly bake the mental array output or what you get from mental array into vertex paint or vertex color, but by using render to texture we'll be able to gather all of this information. So this is what we have now, and I'm just going to make sure that I've got a material. This is just a regular Arch and Design material. I'm dropping it on this material on the object here, and I just made it like a matte finish, and I want to make sure that we've got ambient occlusion on, and I think that I'll just make it to 1 feet here and make it black. So let's render this and see what we got. So we got the ambient occlusion line here. I'm going to spread it a little bit more so that we can get some maybe, I don't know, 5, so we can get softer ambient occlusion on the corners here. So it's a little bit strong, but that's good. That's fine. We're gonna keep that this way. Actually, no, that's too strong. So let's go back to around 3. Whoops, not 43, but 3 feet. And we're going to tighten it a little bit more. All right, so that we're happy with that. So what we have now is just the straight rendering out of mental array, and we want to bake this as a texture to the object so that it can be output to the game. But the thing is that now we have this geometry, and you see the edges there. They're this very simple geometry, and we want to bake all of the information into the vertex color. So we'll need to refine that geometry. But first, let's go to the render to texture and bake all of this to texture so that we can see it directly in the viewport, and it's exportable to the game engine. So first of all, I bottled this very quickly. There's no UVs applied to that. So whenever you do render to texture, the first thing you need to think about is doing good UV layouts. I'm going to go down here and apply an unwrap UV. I'm going to make it quick. I'm going to select all of the faces in the unwrap, go into the edit window, mapping, flatten mapping. I'm just going to make the face angle threshold to 0, and actually the spacing here I'm going to make it very small, so 0.01. and OK, and it's going to lay out all of the faces here for me, and you know it's pretty it's a good start to start with. I could refine it, but you know for this kind of square shape model, it's a very easy layout. Okay, we got that. I don't care too much about the seams. So I'm just going to turn that off so we can see what we're doing in the viewport. And I'm ready to go into render to texture. So I'm going to go render to texture. One other thing I want to mention that's very important is that render to texture doesn't support the or doesn't take into account the exposure control. So what I'll make sure here is that I've got no exposure control. So what I see in the viewport here will be what I get into the render to texture. So I'm going to turn off the exposure control. I'm going to use the existing channel, which is the unwrap that I've done here, so map channel number 1. And what I want to get from the render to texture is a complete map. So I just want to get everything. And since I've used an Arch and Design material, what I want to do is I want to transfer that into a standard material. So I'm going to go here, Save Source, Create Shell, and I'm going to create a new bake material. I'm going to make sure that it's a standard material. And what I'm doing here, the complete map, 512 by 512, we're going to put it into the diffuse color. That's very important because when we're going to grab the information from for the vertex color, we're going to use the diffuse map. So that's very important to do that. So I'm going to use the diffuse color here. And for the element background, I always suggest try to use a color that is very similar to the one you're using for the material. So if I go here and I grab that material, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it here as the same color. So it's going to be kind of you know, this, it's going to blend better when you're going to apply it as the texture on the object. So I'm going to render that, and now we're going to get this result. So all of the you see the ambient occlusion, you see the final gather, all of this is being baked onto the object. One other thing I want to mention here is the final gather is set to draft. When you bake the texture, what I recommend is go either medium or high. So I'm going to go back to high here and render again. So we're going to get, it's going to take a little bit longer, but at least you're going to get much finer final gather. So I'm just going to pause it while it renders. Alright, so this is what we get, and the reason why I've increased the final gather settings is that you're going to get much better softness on the edges here and in the area there. So just as a recommendation, I strongly recommend you do that. Use higher. It's for a texture that will always be in your game or in your real-time engine, so you want to make it right. So I increase the final gather settings. So now that we've got that, let's go see what's happening on our model here. So I'm going to close it down. I'm going to go to the material editor, and I'm going to grab the material that was done on this object here. And you see that you've got a shell material, you've got the bake material. So what I do, especially that we want to bring all of this into the vertex paint, what I'll do is I'll grab the bake material, I'm going to bring it into a new slot, make a copy of it, and I'm going to assign that to the object here. So now this is the material that is assigned to the object. So we no longer have a bake material there. Also, I've copied the color. I'm going to grab that color again, so copy that color, and I'm going to paste it into the diffuse here, so that this yellow color is kind of randomly assigned when you bake to texture. So the diffuse color, I'm just putting a regular gray here, because in the bake to texture, what we've done here, what we have is there's some alpha there, and I don't want to, because of the alpha, as you can see here, is going to blend with the color. So when we're going to do the vertex paint thing, it's going to blend with that color, and I don't like to get like yellow spot or pink spot all over the place. So we don't want it to have that. So let's go back here. I'm going to show that map in the viewport, so it's already there. We already see it, so that's kind of cool. So we see all of the shadows, the ambient occlusion, and all of that. So what I want to do now, and actually, you know what? I'm just going to make sure that we show it just to take a look at it if it's self-illuminated. So that's kind of cool. So I'll just bring it back down like so. So what I want to do now is I want to bake all of this information to the vertex color channel. The thing is that it's a very simple geometry, so that would be a wise thing to add some resolution in the geometry to have more vertices to capture all of this shadow and all the subtleties of the ambient occlusion that was that gave us the little tightening on the edges there. So if we want to capture that, we want to refine that geometry. I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to apply a subdivide. I would strongly suggest that you do it manually. I'm doing it the easy way. But the thing is that all of those vertices here, they all pretty much have exactly the same information in terms of vertex color. They're going to get the same vertex color pretty much in this area. So all of these vertices are kind of useless. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I just subdivided it so we have more vertices to capture the information. Now that you see, I'm just going to turn off the edge faces, and I'm going to apply a vertex paint modifier. And the vertex paint is what's going to allow us to capture the map there. So I'm going to turn off the map now in the viewport. Turn that off so that we can go back to the regular gray, and I'm going to show the vertex paint. Right now it's all white, and if I go and I paint on this, that's my vertex color channel. So just go back here to all white, paint all of this, and in the vertex paint here at the complete bottom of the menu, you'll see that we've got assigned vertex color. Usually it's closed by default, but you can open it up and you can define what you're going to grab. So either you want a lighting and blah blah blah. When you want to just grab the color from the diffuse map, which is the render to texture map that we've done, with mental array, with final gather, with ambient occlusion, it's all baked into the render to texture. I'm just going to go here and say diffuse only, color by face. I want to grab the mapping, and I'm going to go here and say assign. So what happened now is all of the information from the rendered to texture map is applied there. So you see that we're lacking some resolution there, that's and there as well. But that's the whole thing about vertex color, is you're limited by the amount of vertices that you have on your model. But you can use the blur here to blur it a little, and you can also just soften the edges where you want to soften that. So, but basically that's how you do that. And now that you've done all of this, I can collapse all of this to an editable mesh or an editable poly. It will preserve the vertex color information. If you go into the tool channel info, you'll see that in the vertex color you've got all of the information that you can bring into your game engine, and this is the information that we're seeing here in the viewport. So that's how you take final gather and ambient occlusion, the global illumination, and you bake it to render to texture, and you grab it with vertex paint to add it as vertex color information.